Welcome back to Everyday Therapy, a podcast with the goal of empowering you to become the best version of yourself. This is the official podcast of Nystrom and Associates. My name is Krista. I'm here with Brett. We are licensed therapists. We are clinical directors. We are excited to be here because we just covered a great topic, which was goal setting and behavior change. This time will be different. I know we've all had that conversation with ourselves. So go back and give that one a listen. Today, we're going to be talking about how do we change our habits. According to author James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, which is you might have heard of it, a pretty popular book these days. There are some pretty easy, he's broken it down into 4 simple steps, how to build better habits. So we're giving all credit to James Clear, but because it can seem like such a gargantuan task to change our habits, we thought it would be helpful to kind of address some of these. So, anything on your mind with this topic to start off, or should I just kind of dig in?
Well, let's just jump in. I think we all can really relate to our bad habits, the habits that our habits, our hang-ups, our hurts that we really want to rid ourselves of.
Right.
And I hope that this is going to be, I really believe this is going to be really relevant for people. And feel free to share this with other people because I think everybody can relate to this.
Right. So I think, again, I really appreciate James Clear's approach to this topic. He talks about how if you're setting a goal, you have to be really conscious of course correcting along the way as much as possible, because you might think you're taking off in a plane from from New York to Italy, right?
Right.
And but even if you make a 1% course, get off course 1% on your way there, you're not even going to end up in Italy. Right. You're going to end up somewhere completely different. So he's saying that's hence the name Atomic Habits, because it's like there are so many little things we can do. And he says just get 1% better every day. And if you get 1% better every day for a year, he says you'll be 37 times better than where you started. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Right.
So
I've seen that just practically speaking of people. I'll say, wow, you look like you've dropped a little bit of weight. What did you do? And they'll say, all I've done, I don't drink pop anymore. And that's like one thing. Everything else is exactly the same.
Yes.
But they'll say, I just don't drink pop, or I switched from regular pop to diets. And just that one little bit of difference over time, to your point, makes a big impact.
Which is sustainable. So typically what we do in those situations, instead of saying, well, I want to get healthier, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to cut out pop.
Yes.
What we tend to do is say, I'm going to go to the gym every day for an hour. I'm going to cut out all carbs and sugar. And I'm going to, we have these lofty things. And so those aren't 1% changes, right? Those are like, I'm going to change 20% of my life right now. Yeah. And I'm going to get from New York to Italy so fast, right?
Yes.
And that's not sustainable. So,
just to underscore that a little bit too, I think what we do is we fail to realize, okay, I've been living out this habit for 20 years, let's say, in my life.
Yes.
And I figure in 20 weeks, I'm going to undo what I've been doing for 20 years.
Like these really ingrained things. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
No, you bring up such a good point, and that's a good segue into talking about the habit loop. So James Clear talks about the habit loop, which is the cycle that we go through when it comes to a habit. So it starts off with a cue. So a cue is something in our environment that triggers the next part of the cycle, which is a craving. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be a craving for food. It doesn't have to be necessarily what you think, but you start to get in your mind like, ooh, I really want to do A, B, or C. Right? Next, so those two things become associated. The cue and the craving are now tied together, right?
Yes.
So then after the craving comes the response, which is whatever action you end up taking.
Yes.
Finally, there's some sort of reward. So and that's either going to keep it in place and strengthen this loop or not.
Yes.
So his point is each one of his laws of behavior change. Mm-hmm. So he says 4 laws of behavior change, one for each step of this cycle. So the first law is the cue. He says if you're trying to have a cue, you have to make it obvious. So be aware of what your cues are I think this one would be like putting a sign up in your, like putting things around your home that are going to remind you, cue you about your goal. Something that's like, instead of now I set this goal and I never look at any other visual reminders, have a cue that makes it obvious.
Okay. So I wonder if like, let's say I tend to eat chips on the couch, 8 o'clock at night during the show. Is that maybe a strategic place to put a cue, or like even before that?
Yes. Okay. So where do you keep the chips?
Actually, I don't eat chips, but I know. But yeah, like let's say the pantry.
Yep. So then what you're going to do is I think this would be an example of how to make it obvious is you would put a sign on the cabinet right there that says, no chips. Or,
no chips.
Or kind of something that, again, cues you that, oh, my goal, oh, my behavior, right?
Yeah.
And you want something attractive for your craving. So, again, they kind of tie together. So you have your cue.
So I could have a cue of like somebody in really good shape that I'd want to be healthy.
Yes.
And maybe the cue isn't in the on the pantry. It's in the car on the way home when I actually start thinking, I can't wait till I can watch my show tonight.
That's a great point. It doesn't have to be, the chips don't even have to be the cue.
Right.
The cue is I'm on my way home and I'm like, gosh, I'm tired. What am I going to do when I get home?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So a really good example that I think a lot of people can relate to is, let's say the cue is you get home and I just want to like zone out and watch TV. Right?
Right.
So why not make it attractive by watching TV on the treadmill? Right? So the cue is I want to watch TV. Okay, fine. But now you're pairing that with your craving. You're adding, I'm on the treadmill. And now it's right here. And I'm still getting my craving. Right? I'm still getting my reward.
You're still getting the reward, right?
So make it obvious, make it attractive. The third law, so we have the cue, the craving, the response. So the third law has to do with the response. Make it easy. So get home. The treadmill's already set up right in front of the TV. You just hop on there. Maybe you even have your workout clothes on, or you don't even change clothes. Again, he's talking about don't add more steps in this.
Remove all obstacles.
Right? Like you're not making. So for me, at the end of the day, if I have to make a separate trip to the gym, it's like, no way.
Yeah.
Because it's like, now I'm thinking, I have to go to the gym, I have to park, I have to go inside, I have to change my clothes in the locker room, I have to blah, blah, blah. So how about cut all that out?
Yes. Get
to the treadmill at home or even at the gym. Don't change clothes. Just put on your walking shoes or have them on. And then maybe I've seen a lot of people bring their iPad to the gym, or I've seen a lot of people watch something on their phone at the gym. So again, you're pairing that craving of I want to
zone out.
And the zone out factor. So I'm going to cue it or add the exercise with it. Now it's easy. So all I have to do is hop on the treadmill in my street clothes.
Yeah.
Again, that's more than you would do otherwise because you would probably have given up by now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, but I still want those chips.
Sure.
I can tell I want those chips.
Okay.
I don't want the treadmill.
Okay. So then the reward. So that's where I think your point with the chips, I think this is where your reward comes in. Is you say, okay, I can have chips, but I got to spend this much time. I can watch my show. I can be on the treadmill, and I can have chips after, but it's only after I'm done. And over time, you might change from chips to something else crunchy, or you might shift from, okay, I'm not going to buy potato chips. I'm going to buy, vegetable chips. Right. Just again, little changes, right?
It kind of reminds me of a couple of things with parenting my kids when they were younger.
Okay.
I would always tell them, I know you want to chill. I get that. Chores before chill.
Nice.
Chores before chill. Or we tell them over the summer, I know you want to play video games. For every minute of video games, you have to do a minute of reading first.
I love it.
And again, kind of going back to what we were talking about the previous podcast of just a 1% change. And, hey, for just a minute of reading. Okay, then you get a minute of, video games. So I like that. And because it's not, and we can tell ourselves, it's not that I'm not getting the reward. I am. It's coming.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay. And so that was basically it. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. So how many of us have set out to achieve some, result?
Yeah.
And we haven't addressed any of these things. And then no wonder we get upset with ourselves because we are doing things that are not obvious, they're not attractive, they're not easy, and they're not satisfying. So why would we stick with it? Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, or on the inverse of this, James Clear talks about, okay, so how do I break a bad habit then? Okay. Maybe the chips is my bad habit. Right?
Yeah.
Or I'll just tell on myself, I have a bad habit of, sometimes late at night, if I'm craving something, like I want a treat or a snack or maybe I'm saying I didn't really have a good dinner, so I want to order it. So we're going to go through this I want to break my bad habit of ordering food at night.
Okay. Yes.
Because I have, Instacart or there's DoorDash. I mean, you name it.
Yeah, we have the BP gas station.
Yes. There you go.
Literally, it's about a 30-second drive, and I call it the extended kitchen because I'll be like, I'll just go. I'll be back you want that licorice? I'll go get it,
Totally.
It's super easy. Again, but that kind of goes back to when we're trying to build, habits and kind of like what you're saying is get rid of obstacles.
Right.
So, all right. I want to hear more.
Okay. So as I'm going through this, we should come back to the BP. And we should apply this to that too, if we have time. So to break a bad habit, you take the first law and you invert it. So the first law is make it attractive. For the bad habit, we want to make it invisible.
Ooh.
So don't have it out. Don't have it visible, right? Make it something that you're not thinking of in your day to day.
Sure. So in practically speaking, don't have chips, don't have licorice, don't have sugary processed food in the house.
Yep. And if you're trying to go for the 1% increment, maybe you take them from storing them on the countertop or the first cabinet to now they're up in the top end of the closet behind the crock pot or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can't see it. And again, you could just eliminate it from the house, but it's up to you. So for my example, make it invisible, I need to delete those apps off my phone. Right. I need to make it where I'm not opening my phone and seeing DoorDash or Instacart first thing. And some people do that where they'll delete things or they'll put them on a different part of their phone or whatever.
Sure.
Okay. The second one, so inverting the second law, which is make it attractive, we want to make it unattractive. So I don't know. I'd have to think how to make it unattractive in terms of eating out. Probably looking at my bank account.
I was going to say the same thing. Do something like that where you have your bank account, your balance or something like that.
Or, oh my gosh, if I really wanted to get brutally honest with myself, I could add up how much money I've spent in the last year on eating out. And I should just post that or put that on my home screen where it's like, okay, you spent, let's say $500 on whatever in the last however long. And really get specific about this is where your money's going. So again, it's unattractive to think, oh, I'm going to give more of my money to this.
Right. Now, I'm going to push back on something even harder for us.
Okay. Yes.
Because I want to make this as relevant as possible. And I think we are very relevant about food and, how we spend and things like that. We have our phones, and many of us want to get off of social media, or not off of it completely, but I don't want to be so tied to it. And yet I can be on Facebook or Instagram for 2 hours and not even realize it. And it's so readily available. So how do I do that? How do I make that invisible and not appealing?
My roommate has started putting her phone in a different room.
Ooh.
Not just when she goes to bed, but she'll put it in a different room, when she gets home for the day.
Right.
And I think that's what you're talking about. It's you could delete that app off your phone, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. You could do that and put your have an hour where the first hour after I get home, or maybe the last hour that I'm awake, in my case, when I want to order food, my phone's not there. It's downstairs, it's in another room, it's in the car, whatever. Another thing that she does is there's settings you can change on your phone to make it from color to black and white.
Oh.
And doing that is less desirable for us when we look at our apps and our screen.
Oh,
it's not as much of a dopamine trigger when we have black and white.
Yeah. Did not know that.
I know.
Now, these are actually tips, too, for parents with kids. Yes. Because there is, like, in my mind, undeniable addiction to phones, screens, apps, etc. And so, I think these are good tips for parents to try to do with their kiddos.
Yes, exactly. So the inversion of the third law, which is the response stage of the cycle. So the third law was make it easy if I'm trying to develop a good habit. So if I'm trying to break a bad habit, I want to make it difficult.
Yes.
So again, whatever that looks like, it could be I'd have to download the app again.
Yes.
Or maybe I set up something with my roommate where I have to go and get, here's what I want to order, here's what I want to do. And I have to talk it through with someone first. It's like whatever you can build in to stop this, like it has to be difficult, right?
So true. And that's what we do with people. Actually, when you think about it, people who have suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
And they have recurring suicidal thoughts.
Yep.
We'll say, okay, especially if they have active suicidal thoughts, meaning they have a plan.
Yep.
It's like, oh, okay, so I'm going to use pills or I'm going to use some sharp object to cut myself or something. Yep. Get rid of all of that.
Yep.
And we've done that with people like, hey, so you have a history. You've attempted suicide in the past. And so let's get rid of everything sharp in the house.
Yep.
And they'll say, well, that's a little extreme.
Right.
And we'll say, well, extreme behaviors require extreme interventions.
Exactly.
And so, but notice, like, if you're not making it accessible or easy and you're making it virtually invisible, it's really hard to engage in that. And a lot of times what we forget in all of these habits is there's this wave, like an urge, that we have to engage in it. And those urges typically last, a really strong urge, it's debatable, but like maybe 25 minutes.
Yep.
And so think about that. If this is invisible and not accessible, and it takes me 25 minutes to get to whatever I'm looking for, the urge and its intensity and its luring capacity, the crave, if you will, is really dissipated by the time I'm ready to engage in it.
That's such a great point. I think they call it urge surfing, don't they?
In DBT.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we call it. Yes.
Okay, so the last stage of the habit loop.
Yes.
The fourth law is make it satisfying if you're trying to build a good habit. If you're trying to break a bad habit, you have to make it unsatisfying. So how could we make it unsatisfying to either... I was thinking press the snooze button. I have enough bad habits that we could spend a lot of time on this. But
yeah, me too.
But ordering food, make it unsatisfying, whatever this reward piece is.
Sure.
So,
Well, I can think of like food. If it were me, I'd probably look at, the amount of money I spent, because this would be a motivating factor for me.
Sure.
I'd maybe have a picture of some children that I know are starving in the world. And I could be why am I spending this much money? I'm fine.
I don't need this food.
They need this money.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking off the top of my head, that would be motivating for me, not to induce shame, but to induce motivation of, wow, look what I can do. Yep. Something positive rather than just, focus on, I stink, I'm selfish. But
right.
Well, look what I can do with this.
Right, exactly. Let's go back to the BP. We'll wrap up with that. So, okay. So how are we
Don't mess with my BP now.
How are we going to make BP invisible? Or at least what's the cue? What's the cue for going to the extended grocery store or the extended kitchen?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it's usually, there's a certain time of night. And I think we get tired, we get stressed.
Yep.
We get hungry. We're not hungry. We're just tired and stressed. And
snacky. You get snacky.
Yeah, we get snacky. And then we get snarky. And then, so I think the cue is just like something internal like that.
Okay.
I'm just kind of restless. And I have these vulnerabilities going on. So,
sure.
And so then it's like, it's almost like muscle memory sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that's the cue.
So do you need to hide the car keys?
That was my first thought.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, maybe you guys even just putting them away, make it invisible.
Right. Oh, right? I put them away.
Yeah.
It's just, I think my wife won't go to the BP. I'll go to the BP.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's helpful. At least
so I can give it to her.
She could hide the keys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Making it unattractive. Some of the things we've already talked about would be pictures. We're very visual when it comes to this cycle. This stage of the loop is making it unattractive when you think about how much money I've spent and right. And the impact it's going to have on my health, clogged arteries or
so it can be a negative kind of thing that motivates us.
Yes.
So I could take a picture of when I was on the scale last and put the little picture on the steering wheel when I get in to go to BP, and I'm like, ooh, that could be.
Yes.
And some people might react and say, oh, it's so negative and shame-based.
Sure.
Shame's not bad if I'm actually doing something that's harmful.
So exactly. We're talking about what works for you. Someone else might not have a number on a scale. They might have something else, right?
Yeah.
So we're not saying you unilaterally have to, have like that number in your face.
Or I could put the number in a positive way. If this is going to motivate me, I could put a number of what I want the scale to look like.
Right.
Just when I get home, stick it on the steering wheel. So when I get back in to go to BP, it's right there.
Exactly. Make it difficult. So again, if you walk to BP? I mean, this.
Well, living in Minnesota, it's already kind of built in for half the year. Because the weather makes it a deterrent.
That's a really good point.
But as bad as the weather can be, it's still not strong enough for me sometimes. So I gotta think about that.
You'd have to think about ways to make it difficult, and then lastly, you'd have to make it unsatisfying to go to BP. Right? How would you make it unsatisfying? Maybe every time you go to BP, you have to give an extra $20 to someone in your life.
Right.
Like,
or sometimes just call somebody. You know what? I did it again.
You have to confess.
Yeah, you have to confess. I mean, there's something about that is very powerful.
Yep.
Where you just confess, went to BP again.
Right.
Because I don't know about you, because of my faith tradition, I type up my prayers. Because my ADHD, I'll lose focus. Dear God, squirrel, and so I type up my prayers. And so part of my prayers is I confess what I've done or habits or kind of bad attitudes. And when I see it on that computer screen, I was really harsh with this person.
There you go.
Ooh, wow. Suddenly it's very real. And I think confession with other people is super helpful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So we're kind of limited by our own creativity in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone is interested in studying this more, you can go to jamesclear.com. There's a summary of Atomic Habits, and he has some helpful tools on here, some charts you can print out. So check it out. And as always, be gentle with yourself when you're making changes, but focus on the system, not the goal. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, be gentle with yourself.
Be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, and be generous to yourself and others. One way you can do that is by sharing everyday therapy with...
Sharing the podcast, exactly. Send it to someone who has been struggling to make a change in their life. Maybe this will help them out. All right, everybody, we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.